Hello everyone, my name is Kyra. Today I'm going to be making this silly little R2-D2 out of wood, cosplay foam, acrylic paint, wire, clay. It was a long process, it was tedious, but it was worth it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff involved in the creation of this little goofy guy here. He's even got ball bearing wheels underneath. So if you want to see how I make this guy, stick around. So I start out with these 2 pieces of pine wood. Of course, don't get it right on the first try. I do fail a lot, you guys just don't see it too much in my videos. So I pop it onto the log, and the first part is like pretty much, as they say, a trash can, which was weird to carve, but it did take a lot of walking around in a circle just to get him rounded up. And then sticking off of his little trash can body, he has this foot, which is what I'm working on right now. I left the foot kind of big and chunky at first because I wasn't sure how I was gonna whittle it down. And that's how I do all my carvings. I always take little pieces at a time because once you cut it off, you can't really put it back on easily, at least. So I left a lot of space on that bottom foot there. Plus, I'm really glad I did because I put the ball bearing feet in later. And if I cut it too small, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So for the legs, I cut the log first at an angle, and then I split the log in half. That way the 2 legs will have the same angle on the bottom of their feet. Since it's such an intricate thing, I actually drew the shape of it on the log. I wanted to make sure I didn't cut too much off here. It was ridiculous how much my brain broke trying to make these legs. As you can see me here, I'm just staring at the wall. My reference pictures are over there on the wall. I did that so many times throughout this process because just for some reason, the legs being opposite and having that angle tripped my brain up, and I had to like really focus on what am I doing on what side of each leg. I can't explain it. It was just very tedious. Then once I got the legs down to close to the size that I wanted, before details, I filled the cracks because there was so many cracks in both sides of this log, which was the body and the legs, that even if I was trying to do detail work, some pieces of wood would fly off. So I had to glue them before I did any kind of detail work. I did it with the body as well. There was probably like 8 cracks around this that I had to fill before I could even do any more work after that. So there was a long period of waiting between filling all those cracks and actually being able to do detail work. I always like to smooth things up before I do detail work because it just allows my eyes to see better. Like the canvas of the wood becomes smooth and I'm able to see what I'm working with. And that's why I usually grind stuff before I do any kind of Dremel, just so I can see what I'm doing. My plan after that was to sand it with a fine sander, and I totally forgot to do that before I had started drawing on it. So I drew all of his little details on his body and everything before I realized I didn't sand him, and I was not going to redraw all those details again. So then we Dremel some detail on the legs. I'm sorry, the camera was super bright for some reason, so you can barely see what I'm doing, but I did lots of little Dremel work on these legs, both sides. Then it's time to attach the legs to the trash can body. It was confusing at first, but I had a plan. I was going to drill holes through each leg, and then I was going to put I think it's a 3/4 inch dowel through the leg and into the body, and that way I could put glue on the 2 pieces and hold it together. So here's the glue. I put it inside, I put it on the dowel, and I also put it inside the hole in the leg as well. And this is what I was talking about. I start doing all the drawing on here. I could have freehanded it with the Dremel tool, but there's just too much going on R2-D2 to assume that I'm going to Dremel in the right spot and have enough space for everything. So I drew all of it, which took I think it took like 30 or 45 minutes just to draw, and that's when I realized I didn't sand him smooth, so he gets to be kind of a lumpy carving, and it is what it is. He's a lumpy R2-D2. And then it took another 45 minutes of dremeling just to dremel all these little details in there as well. What drove me nuts about this was there was cracks going down his body, and they weren't straight down, and my brain kind of carved everything at a slant because of it, and I didn't realize it till I was done. Don't have to be perfect all the time, you know? So then R2-D2 has 3 little knobbies sticking out of his head, I guess we'll call it. I drilled holes with spade bits and I used dowels, glued them in, and then after the dowels dried, I used what I call an eye maker tool to press into each one. Right here, this was unnecessary, but I did it just because of the way his arms looked, so I drilled a little bit into the leg, and then I used another eye maker bit to make a circle, and then I put a screw in, which really doesn't do anything structurally, but it was just there for looks. Then you see me drilling holes in the legs and the little equipment on the inside of his legs. That was for these little pipes you see on his legs here. And then the worst thing, I don't know why I did this to myself, I always make stuff you have to spray paint white, but white paint, if you put it on wood, it kind of just soaks into the fibers, so you have to seal it with something first if you want it to be stark white, and I did want him to be stark white. So I sealed him first, then I painted him with white spray paint. And also, sometimes if you put sealant over white paint, it turns it yellow. And I didn't want to have him yellow. Most of the time I don't really care if it kind of turns yellow, but this guy had to be a little white R2-D2. So then this is how I made the little pipes out of cosplay foam and wire. I just took, this is armature wire, it's just bendable, flexible wire. I cut it to the right length and kind of shaped it the way I want to for all 4 pieces. And I'm just pressing it into the little holes that I drilled into his leg and his leg equipment. So then this lovely stretchy stuff is cosplay foam. It's awesome. I haven't worked with it too much, but what I have done with it has just been so cool. So I just put a little bit of foam around each wire, and then you let them dry. They dry in like, I don't know, I think I had it dry in about 2 hours is all. And then the painting, oh my goodness, the painting. It took so long. I think I did like 5 different sessions of painting, and it doesn't seem like a lot of stuff, but it was just the amount of little tiny details that I had to deal with, and also some of the paint I had to do in 2 layers, and some of the paint I had to mix to make the correct color that I wanted. It took a very long time. And this metallic paint that I'm using is actually cosplay paint. I guess it's like a flexible acrylic, or you can use it to paint armor and stuff like that, so when it flexes it doesn't crack like other acrylic paint. Obviously this guy's not gonna flex or anything like that, so it was kind of unnecessary, but I loved the metallic color of it. Same with the blue. It's also the same paint. Forgive me please, I did forget a few details on his body, and I didn't do his bottom half, like his underside. I just ran out of time and I totally forgot to carve that part. I didn't do the little yellow circle on his back either, so Star Wars people, please forgive me. It was a lot and I was over it by the time I was done with this thing. I did a little black details around the edges and some gray for his feet. And I know his feet aren't that big, but I was purposefully saving room for the little ball-bearing feet. Then you take just a spray clear. This is just like clear acrylic spray to spray over his details, and that way it doesn't turn him yellow, and it seals some of the paint so it doesn't scratch or fade as easily. Putting in the little foam pieces. I don't know what these are for. It's gotta be for some fluids, hydraulic fluids or something for his little feet. Not sure, but they're cute. And then for his little ball bearing feet, I just screwed them in. Easy stuff. I kind of made like a little dish under his feet so that they were up into his foot cavity, if that's what you want to call it. And that way they didn't stick out so much. Here he is, all finished. He's a little wonky, a little silly. He'll be hanging out in my shop for a while till I get tired of him. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching my silly little R2-D2 creation. I do want to make more Star Wars stuff. So far, if you haven't seen it, I made Baby Yoda about 2 years ago, and then I got this guy. I do have a couple other ideas I want to do in between things, so let me know what you want to see next, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!